Hey, what is up, OGs and converts? Norm James in London, Ontario, Mike Augello in Cheektowaga, New York. This is the Leafs Convo presented by Oak Ridge Ford in London, Ontario, oakridgeford.com. The Maple Leafs a 4-3 winner over the Oil Boys. That's 3 straight wins for the Maple Leafs. Nothing's perfect in the biggest market in hockey, but I guess they're getting there, Michael. Good morning.
Good morning, Norm. The look on Connor McDavid's face after the overtime goal, I think, said enough because, they were making a big deal out of the fact it's the first Oilers-Leafs Saturday night matchup with McDavid at Scotiabank Arena, which I found hard to believe, but okay, because I know, obviously they only play each other twice a year before the North Division this year. But most of the games have been weekday nights. But you could tell after the 3-game sweep in Edmonton that the game meant a lot. And the way the Oilers played, especially in that second period, the goal that Draisaitl scored was incredible. I mean, I don't think Campbell stops anybody stops 2 of the 3 goals that Edmonton scored. But it was, I think, a statement of the fortitude of the Leafs that they came back, tied the game, and won it in overtime.
Yeah, it's not going to be easy over the final 22 games, teams with vendettas, teams with agendas. So the Oilers had a little bit of vengeance in mind. They weren't able to get it done completely, but they did get the point. And, Mike, in the standings, they're only 3 points behind the Maple Leafs, so the Buds aren't home and cooled by any means. They may finish 4th in the Scotia North Division. However, Jack Campbell 6-0 now. This team has won 3 straight games. It's ticking up in the standings at its own pace. Mm-hmm. That's a big deal. And when you look at the scoring summary in the game, all of the Leafs' top offensive guys were able to get on the sheet. Tavares, Nylander with goals, and then capped off by number 34, scoring his 3rd goal in like 11 games. Austin Matthews, nice to see. Maybe that gets him going a little bit. And if that's the case, that helps the Leafs cause and makes things more difficult for the opposition.
Well, starting with Campbell, obviously the weight of everything is on him right now. People were commenting on before playing against Ottawa on Thursday, the onus is on him right now with the uncertain status of Anderson. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But, now he's 6-0. And in that game, okay, the Darnell Nurse goal was probably not great. It was, it was a nice play by Nurse, but it was 5-hole. Like I said, the 2 goals from Draisaitl and Tyson Barrie, I don't think anybody stops. They were fantastic plays by both Draisaitl and Barrie. But Campbell kept him in that game. I don't know how many times. Give me $1 for every time I've heard about Grant Fuhrer keeping the Edmonton Oilers in the game back in the day when it's a 6-5 game. It's the big save that he made. But I mean, last night was an indicator. Campbell made a save on McDavid. He made a couple other saves in the 3rd period. They're down 3-1 and kept them within 2 goals, and that allowed for the comeback. So, and I don't put a lot of stock into, look at how they're celebrating after the game and look at how they're talking to Campbell. I think the Leafs know right now with Anderson's uncertain status that everything is on Campbell. It's, he's going to get the majority of the games, and maintaining his confidence is a big thing. And he's a happy and very confident guy right now. So 6-0, and I think the Leafs right now are going to ride the hot hand and may not have a choice based on what we're starting to hear about Freddie Anderson.
Well, success starts from the net out in most cases, and if the vibe is a positive one between the pipes, the team will feed off that. Mm-hmm. Anderson's injury, shrouded in mystery. What is it? When's he coming back? Should we just let that simmer and focus on Jack Campbell as being the number 1? And obviously Kyle Dubas has to be thinking about this team's fortunes going forward. And if that means acquiring an upgrade to back up Jack Campbell, then he has to maybe not fully go down that avenue, but take a look down the street to see what's available.
Well, Sheldon Keefe was very careful in terms of his comments yesterday before the game about Anderson, essentially saying the medical staff has looked at him. They're evaluating what's going on, that an update will be available. Elliot Friedman, during the intermission of the game, was talking about that his return is not imminent, but that they're not going out and looking for a goaltender on the trade market. Now, based on what they find out, the way teams operate, we'll be the last people to know about the full status of Anderson, and if it is something that could be for the rest of the season, or at least the rest of the regular season, would that spur Dubas into going out and making a deal to acquire backup goaltender? The problem is there is not a lot of goaltending out there, not a lot of quality available goaltending. Like Jonathan Bernier is going to be a get at the deadline, supposedly. Maybe Linus Ullmark from Buffalo, but I can't see them trading him because they don't have anybody else to play goal. So there are very, very few options out there. But if Anderson is out until late March, late April, then it might be something that Dubas. You got to remember, if Anderson's hurt, they could put him on long-term injury, and that would open up space. But then they would have to make sure that Anderson doesn't play until the end of the year, because if they add players using the space created by Anderson, then Anderson can't come back until after the regular season. So there's a lot of cap ramifications.
Let's get this straight, though. When you conceptualize the Leafs as a winner, Freddie Anderson was your Conn Smythe winning goaltender. 2 weeks ago, fans wanted him unseated. Right now, Jack Campbell is the number one.
Yeah,
this team is better with Freddie Anderson healthy and Jack Campbell playing some of the time. Is it not? Is that not what we should be expecting?
Yeah, that was the plan. The plan was of a 56 game schedule. The plan was to play Freddie 35 games and Jack Campbell 21.
But then Jack Campbell got hurt.
And forced Freddie to play more games. Domino effect that put too much stress on Freddie, and then he gets hurt. So everything stems from increasing the workload and where they didn't want to. Now, if being off for 2 or 3 weeks allows Anderson to get back to as close to 100% as possible, I think the Leafs will do that, and they'll bite the bullet when it comes to playing Hutchinson in back-to-back games. But the thing they have to be concerned about is Campbell getting re-injured, because then if that happens, then I think all bets are off. And if that happens before April 12th and they're going in with Hutchinson playing every game, then they might have to make a trade for a goalie. The uncertainty of what's going on in between the pipes may force them to make a move. But let's just say this. I know the rumors are out there. David Pagnotta of the Fourth Period reported it. My boss Eklund reported it. I don't buy Jonathan Quick. Not a chance in hell. And not because he hasn't been a great goaltender, and he's probably a Hall of Famer. He's $5.8 million on the cap for 2 more years. And I don't think the Leafs really want to lock themselves in on a goaltender for 2 more years, besides either Campbell or if they re-sign Freddie Anderson. So I don't think that one flies.
This is the Leafs Convo for Oak Ridge Ford, Norman London, Mike in Buffalo, Andrew Walters, Dyslexic, Joe Shedler, Benny B. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. Just a few viewers now, but we'll reach thousands here in the next few hours. Something to keep in mind, OGs and converts, if you want us to add your comments to the show, add your comments, questions, concerns, insults, whatever, to community, the Leafs Convo channel on YouTube. Hit the community tab and leave the comments there. It's just a lot easier for me to get at them. We appreciate all the comments and the conversations you guys carry on underneath each post on YouTube, but there are dozens and dozens of them, and it's difficult for me to pinpoint specific comments because I do see them come up on my notifications and then they get lost. If there's anything you want added to the show, let us know. Just wanted to go ahead, Mike. And
if you subscribe to our YouTube, you get notified that there's going to be a live broadcast. So you'll get the heads up. There'll be like a little note that pops up on your computer. So if you're not subscribed, please subscribe.
Akinzeki from Cyprus. What is going on, my friend? Super Coop, Rob V, and Rob Falcon, winners of Leafs Convo hoodies. They were able to answer correctly the question, which radio station did Mike and I first collab on? AM 980. Back in 2009, Mike, what I recall from that time is a lot of dread, a lot of dreary conversation, morbid discussion about a really terrible hockey team.
Yeah, and me ranting and raving after they made the Phil Kessel deal that that Brian Burke should be like hung up by his toes in Nathan Phillips Square. I mean, it was just, I put great memories there, Norm. I just want to relive them all.
Yeah, and we're creating memories right now. What a great foundation this organization has, but foundationally, it's terrific. Beyond that, the growth expansion of a team becoming a champion, that's the difficulty right now that Kyle Dubas and the brass are having with adding that next layer that will be able to puncture the historical troubles that this team has encountered when the playoffs come around. So we shall see if it all comes together in the next 6 weeks to 2 months. I'm certainly hoping it does. One of the things that's really encouraging is Alex Galchenyuk's infusion of energy and ingenuity to that second line that was really slumping. Whose fault was it? Nylander's, Tavares? Did you have to split those guys up? Well, you know what? They bring in this reclamation project who still had a ton of skill, just maybe trying to find the right place and certainly do it in the nick of time. And it's looked pretty good over the last few games. We keep our fingers crossed that this is a trend that can continue.
Yeah, I mean, kudos to Kyle Dubas because essentially Galchenyuk was sort of found money in the sense that, he was on the outs in Ottawa. They signed him. He barely played. He was sort of a fourth liner. And from his days in Montreal that he's a skilled forward and he needs to be played with skill, and that accentuates his positive. So they didn't bring him in and put him on the fourth line. What they did was they reestablished his confidence. They went down and put him down with the Marlies for a couple of weeks, let him play in a league where his talents will make him shine. He got his confidence back, and then they brought him up and played him on the second line. And for a couple games, he played really well. And I was a little puzzled yesterday when Keefe, before the game, said, well, I'm going to switch things around and I'm going to put Thornton back on the line with Matthews and Marner, and I'm going to put Simmons on the line with Tavares and Nylander, and put Galchenyuk on the fourth line. And he didn't play badly on the fourth line, but the other lines, sort of the mix didn't work. And I don't know who was on for the two goals. I think Engvall's line was on for the Barrie goal, but I think the Matthews line was on for the goal again. No, actually, I think the Engvall line was on for both goals. But the whole point was the matchup between McDavid and Draisaitl against the Matthews-Marner line with Thornton on the wing, who's slower. When they were out there, you could see the difference. And in the third period, down 2 goals, they put Hyman back with Matthews. They put Galchenyuk back with Tavares. And Galchenyuk was playing like he was shot out of a cannon. He made a great through the leg pass to Tavares on the goal that made it 3-2. And then the pass that he made behind the net went off Justin Hall's skate and to Nylander for the tying goal. So Galchenyuk was central in the comeback. I'm not saying they're not going to go out and trade for a top 6, top 9 forward, but I think it gives them enough flexibility that they don't have to go out and trade for Taylor Hall. They could trade for like a heavier forward that I think is the type of guy they need rather than a scorer. And last night, did you notice Zach Kassian run over Tavares? Did you notice how physically Edmonton was trying to intimidate the Leafs?
Yeah.
Can't allow that to happen.
Yeah, but that's going to happen night in and night out. The Leafs aren't built to retaliate with physical play. I mean, Wayne Simmons, he can do that as much as he wants to, but he's a lone wolf out there, and he's going to injure himself.
No,
I just think that's the way the team is going to be, and they're going to live and die by this mentality.
You're right. I mean, it's Simmons and Muzzin, and I just think you need one more player to. And I'm not saying go out and get a goon. I'm saying go out and get a player who provides. If you prove that you push back against a team, they won't try to push you around as much. And teams right now know that the Leafs are heavy skill and that you can push them around. And if you push them around, that they might cough up pucks and make mistakes, and you need another player or two to be able to put. Bogosian can push back, but there are not many players on this team that'll push back. That's the thing.
Yeah, and the playoffs, we know that the ice surface shrinks. There's less time. The game is more physical, and that carries on through. And it gets tighter and tougher as the series progress, Mike. So. I've been going on about this team preparing for the playoffs. Even if they won 10 straight to finish the 56, are they configured properly to succeed past the first round into the second, third, and fourth? Because the point of getting into the playoffs is having ambition to win the whole effing thing.
Right.
And, you just brought up the point of the Leafs just not being physical enough, even with Bogosian, even with Muzzin, even with Simmons. All of these guys a little bit more tenured, let's just say, one big punch to the orbital bone or hit away from potentially having their careers end because they're just at that point. Again, I digress. Is the team configured properly to be a playoff success? The way we know teams need to be successful in the playoffs, and that's play tight, defensive, physical hockey from game one all the way through to the point they've won 16 straight.
I think the experience that they've added, you see, Thornton and Spezza. I mean, Spezza has been a revelation again this year, and I think Spezza is going to probably be with the Leafs another year or two. I mean, he loves.
This is the Spezza convo.
Yeah, he loves being in Toronto.
We all love him. He's the best. He's the best guy ever.
And the thing that people will love even more about him is that he's made his money. He wants to be in Toronto, so he'll probably sign for $700K until the cows come home. So that sort of counterbalances some of the overpayments that are being made on the roster. But that being said, it's like, I mean, Spezza is an experienced hand. He's played in the playoffs. You've got Thornton, you've got Simmons, you got Bogosian who won a cup last year. I mean, there is a veteran ethic on this team that there wasn't last year, and I mean, I think that's going to go far. But I also think, like I was saying, it's like when you see a team like Winnipeg, who is really heavy, and they have a third line like Andrew Kopp and Appleton, and and Adam Lowry. You cannot go up against that team and just skate around the periphery, because those guys will wipe you away. You need, and Edmonton tried to be physical last year, and Cassian's an idiot. So, I mean, he'll take stupid penalties in the playoffs, but Montreal is a heavy team. So you're going to face one of those three teams in the playoffs, and you have to be prepared. Against Edmonton, you probably will play a wide open style of hockey. Comparative to the other teams in a playoff scenario, because that's the only way Edmonton knows how to play. And in that, you're risking things because Draisaitl and McDavid, you play throttle open against them, they can kill you. But against Winnipeg and against Montreal and maybe Calgary, if they make the playoffs, it's going to be a slog. It's going to be pitched battles. And I'm a little concerned if the Leafs can win those games.
Stan Bosser is in the chat. Mike, you are so right about Jason Spezza. Spezza is going to play for $700K for as many seasons as he possibly can. Then he'll line up beside Sheldon Keefe as an assistant coach. Become the first assistant to Kyle Dubas. I don't know, run the concession stands at Scotiabank Arena when they do open up. He's directing traffic.
It's going to be Spezza dogs at the Scotiabank Arena instead of Berkey dogs.
Yeah, well, he's a great piece to have. Thornton's a great piece to have. All of these veterans that brought in as another layer of complexity and development and growth and strength for the team, that's great. But, we're talking about Galchenyuk and how he's infused some energy into that second line that certainly needed it. And we've seen Nylander with 2 points last night, Tavares with the goal. But is this entire conversation going to go for naught, for a lack of a better way to put that, if the Leafs don't add the right pieces between now and the trade moratorium, bringing up the fact that teams like Montreal and Winnipeg are heavier and play more physical hockey? And I'm just getting a sense from you that these teams are a little bit more well adjusted for what's to come in the playoffs. And regardless of how talented the Leafs are, their style of play still isn't conducive to playoff success.
All right, well, let's take each team individually, and I'll be quick on this. Winnipeg has a top six that rivals the Leafs. Their top two lines with Scheifele and Dubois at center match up very well with Tavares and Matthews. I think that's about a saw-off. And the third line, with Hyman on the third line for the Leafs, I think they match up pretty decently in the head-to-head against what Winnipeg has on their third line. But there are not many teams in the NHL that match up forward-wise with the Leafs, and Winnipeg is one of the few teams that does. Plus, they have the Vezina Trophy-winning goaltender in Hellebuyck. Now I have confidence in Campbell, and if Anderson comes back healthy, then I'll have confidence in him. But Hellebuyck wins that battle, and then the only place where the Leafs have an advantage over Winnipeg is on the blue line with their depth. But Winnipeg is probably going to address the depth on their blue line at the trade deadline. So Winnipeg is a tough match. Montreal, we've seen, even though the Leafs have had success against Montreal, the depth that they have, the strength that they have on defense with Weber and Petrie and Sherratt when he's healthy, and Edmondson, they're big, they're tough, they beat up on forwards. They're not as strong up the middle, but they added Eric Stahl in a trade. Now Eric Stahl may be close to being done. I was willing to take a risk if I was the Leafs to trade for Eric Stahl but Eric Stahl has traditionally been a Leaf killer.
What do you, Mike, just to pause you on that thought, what do you think about the Habs acquiring Stahl and the Leafs not doing that?
Well, and one thing, the 7-day quarantine is funny. I asked the question to Dubas about 14 to 7-day quarantine, and he was like, we can't depend on it going down to 7 days. But apparently the Leafs and Dubas were really hot and heavy of lobbying the Canadian government to reduce it to 7 days. So that was my thought, because
did the Habs make the move the Leafs should have?
The Habs needs were different than the Leafs.
Okay.
The Habs up the middle are pretty weak with Suzuki, Kotkaniemi, and Danault, and they needed a veteran guy like Stahl. Now Stahl and the Leafs for me would have moved to the wing, and maybe that's a move that would have been beneficial to him because he's looked a little slow at center. I mean, you can't really accurately evaluate what Stahl did because in Buffalo everything is a cluster. But I think right now, that was a good prudent move because of two reasons. One, he's a veteran guy. Two, the price they paid was a 3rd and a 5th round pick, and Buffalo retained 50% of his salary. So that was the only thing that was good news for the Leafs and Kyle Dubas, was the fact that the price that Montreal paid for Stahl probably set the market for a rental deal for the Leafs. If the Leafs go out and trade for, and I hope it's not Granlund, but there are other guys like Alex Iafallo from the Kings and a few other rental forwards out there. If they go out and make that deal, they're not giving up a 1st-round pick. They're not giving up a top prospect. The only way they're giving that price up is if they're trading for a Rickard Rakell or somebody who has term left. So I think that the price that the Leafs will pay will be significantly less based on what Montreal paid for Stahl. And if that's the case, then they can add without really affecting the team that they have right now.
I guess it comes down to speculation over which team is built the best or the most effectively to succeed in the playoffs, and adding to the mystery of the next round is that the Leafs are playing against the same 6 teams over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And really won't have a taste of what to expect until they open the border and they're allowed to intermingle with these American teams. So for as much as we want to put a lot of stock into how the Leafs have played and where this group is in terms of its development together, who knows what the hell's going to happen. OG's converts, I'd like to know from you, do you think the Leafs are configured right now properly to go on a long run of success in the playoffs? They can't get past the first round. I mean, that's something that we know very well. It's not because they haven't had their chances to, but are they built to win a title? Do they have the components in place from top to bottom that may not prove to work together as a well-oiled machine on night in and night out? But just looking at the roster in time, does this group, save for a couple of modest alterations, have the ability to go on and be something great? Only time will tell. That certainly remains to be seen, Mike. Over the final 22, does this team need to pick up every bloody point that it possibly can, try and dominate and go into the playoffs with momentum? Or does this team need to focus more on getting its act together completely defensively, playing a more physical game, playing more complete hockey? And if they win the Scotia North, great. If they finish second or third, but accomplish the goals of seasoning and conforming into the team that will succeed in the playoffs, that should be the strategy. Well,
I mean, first they need to get their own house in order. So going into the playoffs, they need to be organized in a mindset similar to what they were at the beginning of the season. They lost 6 of 7 games in this slump, and really during that stretch, their power play didn't score, and their top 6 was relatively ineffective. It was mostly third, fourth line offense that was scoring. They seem to pull out of that. I mean, yesterday it was the second line with Tavares and Nylander getting the game tied, and then the Matthews and Tavares on the ice for the game winner. So the core players came through, but their power play is still struggling. I think eventually that will get rectified because there's too much talent there.
Yeah, 6th in the league right now, 26.3.
But they're 0 for the last 16, I believe, and that's with the talent that they have, it's reprehensible. But what they really need to do, I mean, and then this is you notice this, and you have to take a cue from what happened last year with Tampa. Tampa was one of the best teams in the league. But what did they do at the deadline? They added Barclay Goodrow from San Jose for a first-round pick, and they added Blake Coleman from New Jersey. Both guys who lengthened the depth of their roster, and they added Bogosian, who had his contract terminated from Buffalo. That's what I think Kyle Dubas needs to do before April the 12th. Maybe not make the big splash. Maybe you add yourself a 7th defenseman, because right now, God forbid, if one player gets hurt on the blue line, it's Marty Marincin or Rasmus Sandin, who I don't think is ready for the playoff pressure because he's a young kid. Where I think they have more depth at forward, but I'm for add a depth forward, add some depth on defense, because I don't think you want to affect the esprit de corps of this team right now by shaking up and subtracting somebody from the roster in need of adding somebody. I think if you add and can squeeze them in the cap, that is something that will work. So I think they, more than anything, they need to get their own house in order and be healthy going into the playoffs.
Yeah. Procedurally, though, what does this team need to do? What does Sheldon Keefe need to hammer home with this group? And dare I say, alter the style, the idea of play on the ice?
Well, I mean, I definitely think that he needs to stress the defensive end. Now, the thing is, I think that the mindset that they've had all year or most of the year has been that. And you see Matthews coming down below the goal line to help out the defense, win battles behind the net so they can break out the other way. Last year, years before that, Matthews was playing his position, but waiting for the outlet from the defenders.
That's the growth of a superstar.
Yeah, but
he's a legitimate superstar and is growing expeditiously and according to his trajectory. It's hard to complain too much about Auston Matthews. So that's great. But
I think there's buy-in throughout the roster, and maybe that's a symptom of the veteran influence of guys like Simmons and Thornton and Spezza. That there is a buy-in to, let's take care of our own house and then worry, and we have enough talent to be able to score at the otother end. So that is the formula to winning in the playoffs, because you're not going to win a playoff game on most nights going 6-5 or 5-4. They're going to be 2-1, 3-2 games. And the little mistakes that you make in your own end are the ones that are absolute killers. And God knows we've seen enough of those over the last few years.
You win playoff games by grinding them out, coming back from a deficit with effective hockey, committed hockey, and winning in overtime, and that's what the Leafs have done their past 2 nights out. Lamnuts in the comments. We also have Leafs Nation, Roy Express, and a few others having a nice little conversation going on right now as you and I talk, and that's what the Leafs Convo is all about. We're conversing about our favorite hockey team.
Yeah, and let me just address a couple of the comments here, because somebody's saying David Savard, somebody's saying Ekholm. Yeah. Columbus is still in the playoff race. Nashville has won, I think, 6 of 7 or 7 of 8. They're 2 points out of a playoff spot. Everybody who was saying Ekholm, Savard, Granlund, those teams might not trade. So you may be limited to New Jersey, Anaheim, Buffalo, Detroit, and maybe 3 or 4 other sellers. And that, that limits the market. That's why I've been saying, that's why I was saying stall, because we knew Buffalo was going to sell, and Buffalo is probably going to sell a couple more. I'm not in favor of Taylor Hall, because that the cap gymnastics that Dubas would have to do to add Taylor Hall's $8 million salary. I don't know how they would be able to do it, but there are forwards out there, Miles Wood with New Jersey, or Lawson Krause with Arizona. I mean, Miles Wood, those 2 guys, those are heavy physical guys that I think would add to the sort of the 3rd line, 4th line of the Leafs. Those are very possible moves. I don't know about Wood because he's got term in his contract, but those are the type of moves Dubas needs to make, not the big splashy Granlund top 6 move.
OG's converts, let your friends know about this podcast. We appreciate all of your support. Please like this post, subscribe to the project. Our availability and our accessibility on YouTube does depend a lot on our subscribership. So, we have a really committed group of OGs and converts and people who are believing in what we do more and more every single day. But the more the merrier. It does help us within the YouTube platform and the algorithm that it uses to promote podcasts like ours. So the more you can support us with likes and subscribing and obviously having your friends do the same, sharing what we do, we get a little more visibility on YouTube. And Mike and I, all we want to do is talk about the Maple Leafs. Sometimes you like what we say, sometimes you hate what we say, but we're very consistent in that we just continue to say what we say, and we're not really affected by too much other bullshit. Mike, a few more comments from you, and then we should probably wrap up. Geez, 34 minutes. This new StreamYard setup is really, really cool in that we can kind of just go at it face to face. It's added a bit of a extra life to the project, and I do personally like the fact that we can converse this way, because when we don't get a chance to see each other, it's just not as intimate.
Yeah, and it's really tough to draw us out. Where we have trouble talking, and it's like it's I don't know. People say I'm like a potted plant. I just never know when to say anything. But
yeah, it's funny though. It's funny though. We're two guys who are not much to look at in your face.
For yourself. What the hell are you talking about?
I'm talking about myself. Yeah,
I got women knocking on my door.
Of course you do. Of course you do. And Buffalo.
Oh,
Buffalo, the B stands for babes.
Yes.
Wrap it up. We got
So the Leafs played their last game against Edmonton on Monday. And that will be challenging. See, the thing is, if Edmonton has aims of catching the Leafs, if they lose in regulation, I think they're 5 points behind then, and with no head-to-head matchups. The Leafs' biggest challenge going forward is going to be Winnipeg, because they play Winnipeg, I think, another 6 or 7 times. They play them 10 times overall, and I think they've only played them 2 or 3. So that's going to be the big challenge. And like I said, I think Kevin Cheveldayoff is going to probably go out at the deadline and add a defender. So that's where I think the battle is going to be won or lost in terms of the North Division, and we'll see what happens.
The Jets remind me of the Blues from a few years ago.
Very heavy. They're very talented. I like, Dubois. We saw what Dubois could do against the Leafs last year in the playoffs. Shifley is one of the best two-way centers in the game. They've got scores on the wings, and Ehlers and Connor and Wheeler. They're a good top team. And Paul Maurice, he didn't have much to work with when he was in Toronto. All he had is Sundin. But he can get the most out of a team, and they have then the foundation that they have is Hellebuck, and Hellebuck, as we saw in the couple games against the Leafs, he can turn a game around by himself.
Hey, speaking of someone who loves to beat the Leafs former head coach Paul Maurice, who's now at the helm of a real contender, not only for the Scotia division but for the entire thing. The Jets are terrific, but Mike, the Leafs have a shitload of talent. Phenomenal group, a ways to go, but over the final few weeks, with a bunch of games against this Jets team that we are talking up so much, a real good opportunity to send a message that, hey, you guys are heavy, you guys can rival us lineup to lineup, but when push comes to shove, in the end, we will beat your asses. We'll finish ahead of you in the standings. And if we see in the playoffs, we're going to do the same. So the Leafs have this opportunity. I'm still waiting for the Leafs to take it to the next level. Like, they're at the next level, but to go above and beyond. And when we talk like this, we're trying to sort out, what this team is, what this team can be, and what it needs to be. Because it's not enigmatic, but it is still complex and a bit confusing based on just how great the roster is, yet all of these things that the team still leaves to be desired. How do you fill that void, and how do you make this team whole?
Well, last point. The experience is there and so prevalent with this team that, and when your experience is something, you save your best effort for when it counts.
Yeah.
So the Spetzas and the Thorntons and the Simmons and the Bogosians, they may just say, okay, we're getting through the season. We're doing what we need to do in the regular season. But when the playoffs start, we're putting it in 5th gear.
Mm-hmm. And we haven't seen this team's best effort when it counts as the current collective we know. I take it back to 2019, April. The Leafs up 3-2 in the series against Boston.
Yeah.
Game 6 at Scotiabank Arena, they go up 1-0.
Mm-hmm.
Win the effing game and go to the next round. They gave up the lead, lost the game, went back to Boston.
Right.
Another sorrow-filled first round against the Bruins, and then they weren't able to do it against the Blue Jackets last year. When push comes to shove, the chips are down, and the team needs its very best effort, we still haven't seen it. But the optimism that we all have is regarding the future, and that this team is better than it has been in the past. and we're still waiting for that big moment. Maybe it's to come here in the next few months. I know that Mike and I will be talking about it regardless of what happens. OG's Converse, thank you very much for joining us in the StreamYard conversation through YouTube. We're going to get this bad boy up. Tell your friends about it. Depending on how well these videos do, we will not only continue them, but do more of them. So, hey, we're here. We know you guys are too. Thank you very much for all of your support. For Mike, I'm Norm. We're out.